Hi guys, Jamie here from JB Motion. In today's video we're going to be making this. Now this was made completely using Unreal Engine 5. For those of you who don't know what it is, I suggest you Google it right now. You're going to be presented with tons of tutorials online that show you how you can go about downloading this amazing bit of software completely for free and use it to create photorealistic renders in real time. For those of you who do know what this is, then great, you'll be able to follow along with this tutorial. It might even be a bit simple for you, but what we are going to be doing is talking about how we can go about importing in the Mixamo character. We're going to be creating a simple landscape and some clouds. Now, one thing to keep in mind is I am using a plugin for this, which does cost around $21 to $24. It's called Ultra Dynamic Sky. But at the same time, you don't have to use it to follow along. You'll be able to use the basic cloud system that comes with the Unreal Engine 5 straight out of the box. So let's get started on this. Here we go. Okay guys, so starting off, I'm here in the Epic Games launcher. So I'm gonna go into my library here. And the first thing I want to talk to you about is a plugin that I have, which is called Ultra Dynamic Sky. It isn't free, but it is very cheap. I think I could picked it up for like $24 or something like that, maybe even less, 21 or something. So you can use the built-in sky that comes, you know, ready to go in Unreal 5. But I would suggest getting this. It's really good. And we're going to have a look at that now in this tutorial. So let's just launch Unreal Engine 5. I'm using version 5.1. And I'm going to pause the video while it's loading up, and then we'll pop in once it's ready. Okay, so we're going to go to Games. Going to click on Blank. We're going to turn on ray tracing. It's not necessary, but I'm going to turn it on. If your machine can handle it, turn it on too. And I'm going to give this a name. Man walking. And I'm going to put this into my Unreal Projects folder, create a new folder. And save it in there. Now let's create this project. So I'll pause the video again, pop back in once it's all loaded up so we don't have to wait. So first thing I'm going to do is go to File and create a new level. So some of you might not want to purchase the Ultra Dynamic Sky plugin. If that's the case, you're going to be going to File, New Level, and we're going to go and create a basic new level. If you are going to be using the Ultra Dynamic Sky, we are going to be going to that eventually, but just bear with me for a second. For those of you who aren't purchasing the plugin, we're going to go to Basic, click on Create. And then we're going to be able to delete this floor. And this is what we're going to be starting with for anybody who isn't purchasing the plugin. And while I'm here, I'll just show you how to navigate the viewport. So to look around, I'm holding down the right click on my mouse, moving that around, and then I'm using WASD while holding down the right click to navigate around. I can move my mouse while I'm holding down the left click, and that's how I'm navigating the screen. I can use Q to go down and E to go up. If the camera speed is too fast, we can reduce that. So now we'll be moving a bit slower. Okay, let's continue on with the tutorial. I'm going to go to an empty level and click on Create. So that's going to give us a blank level. So now I want to bring in the Ultra Dynamic Sky. So I'm going to go to the Epic Games launcher. The Epic Games launcher, go into my library, and then I'm just going to click on the Ultra Dynamic Sky plugin that I've downloaded, click on Add to Project, and select the Man Walking project. So that's just going to load itself in, and then we can go back to Unreal. Let's go to our content drawer, and here it is. going to go into blueprints, and there we can drag in the ultra dynamic sky. Cool. So you might have to wait for it to load the shaders or compile the shaders, but my one did it straight away because I've used this before. So this is the ultra dynamic sky. It's really a great plugin. There's tons of settings in here that we're not even going to go over in this first part of the tutorial. We'll touch on some of them in the next part, but for now we're going to go with as it is, straight out of the box. It looks great. Now we can go into landscape mode, and we are going to create a landscape. So just click on create. That's going to create the landscape for us. Back to selection mode. And now we have pretty much most of what we're going to be doing in this first part of the tutorial done with regards to our scene. Okay, so we're going to move into getting our character in here now. So for this, we're going to be jumping into Mixamo. We're going to browse characters. And I'm using the mannequin character. So to find him, just type in man. And there he is there. He's our man walking. And we want to be using the T-pose. So, of course, Mixamo has all these animations that we can use. But what we're going to be doing first of all is we're going to be importing in the T-pose. And that's going to give us our skeleton. We can then use that skeleton in Unreal and apply various Mixamo animations to it. So just in the Animations tab, type in T-pose. And there it is there. So we're going to download this with skin. Frames per second doesn't matter. But for the animations, I'm going to import them as 24. You don't need to change it at this stage. I'm just doing it so I don't forget to when I am importing the animations. Everything else is fine. So let's download that. So that's downloading away. So while that is downloading, we can search for the walk animation. So the one I'm going to be using is called strut walking. So there's tons of walking animations. I just like this one, so I'm using this one. So our guy's going to be moving away from the camera kind of like this. We're going to have him moving in place so that we can then animate his location inside of Unreal. So from point A to point B while he's walking. I'm going to reduce the speed of his walk just to slow him down a bit. We don't want him walking too fast. And maybe increase his stride a bit as well. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So I'm going to download this. This time we can go without skin because we've already downloaded him in T-pose with this for the skeleton with skin. So for the animations, all we care about are the bones. So without skin is fine. Frames per second is important this time, 24 for that cinematic look. And we're going to download that as for everything else is fine. Cool. Okay, so now we have our T-pose and our strut walking animation. Back into Unreal now. I'll just pause this and we'll jump back into Unreal. Let's go to our content drawer and we'll go to content. We're going to right click in this content panel here, create a new folder, call this Mixamo characters, and we're going to create another new folder and call this animations. So our skeleton T-pose, our T-pose skeleton is going to go into this Mixamo character folder. So let's open that up. And I'm going to go to my downloads here and drag in the T-pose FBX that we've just downloaded from Mixamo. So all the settings are good to go. You can have a quick glance at everything just to make sure that nothing looks different in your import settings, in your FBX import settings. Just make sure it's all matching up to mine. It should be from the get-go, but just double check that and click on import. Don't worry about these. You can just close that down. Back into the content drawer. And now you can see in the Mixamo character in content we have all of this. So this is the T-pose skeleton. This is what we're going to be using to apply our animations to. So just to keep everything organized, I'm going to create a new folder, call it mats for materials, and I'm going to select this one and hold down Shift and select this one. Click and drag all of those materials into the mats folder. Not a necessary step, just to have everything nice and tidy. So now we go back to content, go to the Mixamo or the animations folder. We're going to drag in the animation. So it's the strut walking animation. Just click and drag that in. Now we are going to have to change one thing here. It's going to be the skeleton that we're going to be using, which is the T-pose skeleton that we've already imported into our Mixamo character folder. So let's select that. Just double check that everything is looking as it should be and click on import. So now if we go back to our content drawer, you can see that inside the animations folder we have our strut walking guy. So let's drag him in. We can pop him anywhere and then we can just reset the location to 0 here and 0 here. And now if we double click on the strut walking animation, I don't know if you call these objects, or we're going to go with objects, just going from, say, Cinema 4D. So if you double click on this, you'll be able to then rotate around him. And again, you're going to have to look up how you navigate the scene in UE5. We're not talking about that in this tutorial. And if I want to see the animation, I can hit play, and there it is there. So it looks like his feet are slightly above the ground, so we can just stop that, and maybe let's just... So you can see if I move him up and down there, he's snapping, so we don't want him to snap to the grid, so let's turn that off here. And now we can move him ever so slightly down, so that if I hit play now, it kind of looks a bit better. There is a bit of intersection between him and the floor, so I'll move him up ever so slightly, and we'll go for that. That looks about fine. Okay, cool. Now, I'm going to need an image sequence, or not an image sequence, what is it called? A level sequence. So it's kind of like a timeline, you know, and it's, say, from Cinema 4D, you'd have a timeline. So there is no timeline at the moment, so we're going to create one, and we click on this little icon here, this little clapperboard, I think it's called, and then just add level sequence. We're going to give it a name. We'll just say level sequence level 1. And also let's save this level as, save current level as level 1. So now if we go into our content drawer, we can go to content and we can open up the new level sequence that we just created. And now we have a timeline. So right now our guy isn't moving because we need to drag him into the timeline. And we need to go to the animation, little plus animation button here, and select the only animation that we have available in this project, which is the one we imported, the strut walking animation. So now we can see that he is walking, and we want him to walk for a lot longer than that. So let's increase the frame range here, the view range. We'll go up to 900, and it'll do the same for the working range end automatically. We can just click and drag this up. And now we're able to click and drag this so that he's going to be walking for this 900 frames. We can get rid of this minus 0.15, set that to 0 so that our timeline starts at frame 0. If we hit play there, now you can see that he's just going to start walking and he's going to walk for those 900 frames. Cool, so the next thing we're going to create is a camera. So we're going to go to, where is it? So click on this add button here, go to cinematics and create a Cine Camera Actor. Now what we can do before we even look through the view of our camera, which is kind of pointing over in that direction, you can see what the camera sees here. We're just kind of going to get it as close as possible as we want. Oh, I pressed Control Z there actually. I got rid of my camera, I'll just create a new one. Cine Camera Actor. So now let's just position the viewport to close enough to where we want the camera to be looking. Then we can right click on the Cine Camera object, or the Cine Camera Actor I suppose they're called. Right click on that and say Snap Object to View. So now you can see that the camera is kind of snapped itself to what we're looking at, but obviously, you know, it's the camera settings need to be altered, and then we'll have to move the camera again as well. So let's just set up the camera settings to how we want them. So film back, I'm going to go to, I'm going to keep it at 16:9 digital film. I'm going to go for the 30mm prime 1.4. And I'm going to keep the current aperture as is, and everything else, there's a load of settings in here. Everything else I'm going to leave as is. So let's bring this back along the Y. Now the Y doesn't go up like it does in Cinema 4D. And the X goes side to side, and the Z is the one that goes up and down. So we're going to bring this back along the Y, and you can see everything the camera sees here. If you want full screen of what the camera sees, you can just click up here on perspective and then click on the Cine Camera Actor. So now we'll be able to move this back a little bit more, maybe move it up and down, and we can set this to 0 so that it's centered. And if I just play this, I think that's looking pretty good. So you can see that his feet are out of focus. So we're going to have to set the focus settings as well in our camera. So if we scroll down to focus settings, we can turn on this draw debug focus plane, and that will give us a little purple square to show us where the camera's focusing. Then we can just adjust the manual focus distance and bring it to our guy. And then we can turn that off. So now you can see that he's in focus and he's walking. We might want to have a bit more space beneath his feet, or maybe not. I mean camera space, that is. But I think that's okay. We could just move the camera up just a little bit, up along the Z, or move it down along the Z, I should say. Something like that. Cool. Okay, so in my camera rotation, I can see that this is set to 89 around the Z, so I'm going to set that to 90. And this should be set to 0. So now you can see that we need to adjust this again. So there's no rotation at all in any of the along any of the axes except for the Z. Cool. So now we're going to animate our character's position so that he actually is going to be walking. So we're going to go to frame 0 and go to transform, unravel location. We're going to be animating the Y axis. So just add a keyframe on frame 0 of the Y property under location. And then just scrub forward to around frame something like 259 or 260. And then we can click and drag this to about here maybe. And if we just play that, you see that we're going to get this easing in, easing out. We don't want that. So just lasso, select both of the keyframes, right click and click on linear. So now we're not going to get any easing in or easing out. So he's not moving fast enough. You can see he's sliding along the floor. So we can use this jump to the next keyframe so that we're on this last keyframe, and we can make him move further up. Then just reset the keyframe. And let's have a look at that. So it's looking a bit better. Now this time instead, it's still not great. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to make him get to his destination sooner. So I'm going to lasso select this keyframe, click and drag it to about there. Have a look at that. He's still not going fast enough. See, I want this to be around something like 240 frames. So I do want this last keyframe to be around that position, around the 240 mark. I don't want each clip to be longer than that. So we're going to have to just push him further along the y-axis. So we'll jump to the next keyframe, push him further along, and then reset the keyframe. Let's have a look at that. So we're going to have to push him further along again. Reset the keyframe. And that is looking pretty good. Still a bit of slipping. So I'm going to make sure that I'm on the keyframe. Push him even further along, just a tiny bit, and reset the keyframe again. So now I don't see any slipping at all. So that's looking pretty good. So the last thing we're going to do is, for the whole scene setup and everything, before we jump into rendering this out, we're going to go back into our Cine Camera Actor 1 view, and we want that camera to follow our guy. So make sure we're on frame 0. We can use this to jump to the previous keyframe, and we can wrap all that up. Let's bring the Cine Camera Actor into our sequencer, and now we make the Cine Camera Actor a child of our strut walking guy. And click on none there when it says none. Now you can see that the camera is following along, but it has jumped, so we just need to reposition that. So it probably would have been a good idea to do that at the start, but we can just do that now. We can reposition the camera to just try and get it to where we had it at the start, something like that. And now you can see that our camera is following along with our guy. Okay guys, so we can just set up the frame range now, the working frame, I don't know what it's called in Unreal actually, what's it called? View range end time. So the working range end, so that we're only going to be rendering out the number of frames that we need. And actually one thing that I forgot to do is I forgot to set this to 24 frames per second. So make sure to do that for the cinematic look. So let's just go down to our strut walking man, and we're going to jump to the next keyframe. So now that's changed to frame 192. I think it was like 241 before, but as we changed the frame, the FPS settings, obviously that's changing. So that's given us now 193 frames, which is fine. So we're going to click on our strut walking man actor and jump to the next keyframe. So now we have frame 0192. That's going to be the last one we're working with. So what we can do is we can set this to, what did we say it was? 0192. And hit 0192, hit tab and do the same, 0192, hit enter on that. So now, and that's not going to frame 0192, just click and drag that along. So now we have our red line right there. I don't think that red line matters actually, to be honest. Again, I'm learning, very early stages of learning Unreal at the moment. So we're going to set the working range start to 0, 0, 0, 0, hit tab and do the same for the working range start here and hit enter. And that's called the view range start time. I don't know what this stuff is called, but I don't want to call it, you know, frame range or anything like that because that's Cinema 4D stuff. Okay. Cool. So now rendering this out, we are going to be using a plugin for this. So it's a free plugin. Go to Edit, Plugins, and we type in, I think it's Movie Render or something like that. Movie Render. Yeah, okay, Movie Render Q. So click on that and we're going to restart now. Save selected. We haven't been saving very much as we've been going along, but just save that out. And that is going to save and restart. We can close that down now. And then we go into our content drawer, go back to our content folder, and we can open up this level 1 again. Just cancel that. And we're going to jump into our Cine Camera Actor so we can see what we're doing. It looks like it's jumped actually. Oh no, it hasn't. Just when we open up our sequencer, it kind of goes back to the way it should be. And then we can start rendering this out. So render settings, we're going to go to, where are we going to go? Tools. Is it tools? Is it window? It is window. Cinematics. Movie render queue. We're going to be rendering out the new level sequence level 1. That's the sequencer that we created for this. Turn this, unravel this. We actually don't need to unravel that. Go into settings. We're going to delete the JPEG sequence because we are going to be using a PNG sequence. And we're going to be going into, where are we going to be going? We're going to be going to settings again, and we're going to be using anti-aliasing. So that's going to give us a much better render. Where are you? There you are. So if we want to change the anti-alias settings, we want to override anti-aliasing. Now I'm going to set this to 16. You can set it to, you know, a higher value, like, you know, you can go up into the 30s if you want, but it's just going to increase render time. 16 is a nice middle ground for this. And we're going to go and click on output. We're going to pick an output directory for this. Man walking. I'm going to create a folder called sequences. And I'm going to create a new folder, again, called level 1. And select that as the folder. The file name is fine. Output resolution 1920 by 1080. I'm going to go a bit higher than that. I'm going to multiply this by 1.5. Hit tab. I'm going to multiply this by 1.5 because I want to add a bit of camera shake. Actually, I'm just going to go 4K just all together. So we'll multiply this by 2 and we'll multiply this by 2. So we're going to go 4K on this. So we're going to be able to zoom in if we want, and we're not going to lose any resolution. We're going to be able to add a bit of camera shake in post as well. And it's not going to add hardly any extra time onto our render times at all, unlike Cinema 4D would. 24 frames per second is fine. And that is it. So if I accept that and click on render local, it's going to compile the shaders. I'll pause the video here and we'll pop back in once that's done. Okay, so that's going to be rendering away. And and it's going to give us an estimation of time as well. So that's really high, and it's jumping down now as well. I mean, I have a bunch of stuff open here that I'm going to close down. I have Premiere opened, I have Audacity opened, I have a screen recorder open. I'm sure once I close down all those, that will fly down as well. But anyway, you can see it's jumping down like crazy. This would take a lot longer to render out in Cinema, so it's the beauty of Unreal as well, the fast rendering times. This would render out in real time if we didn't turn on anti-aliasing in this. It would render out pretty much real time. Okay, so that has finished rendering. Didn't take very long. So we're just going to bring this into After Effects now. So let's do that. Make sure PNG sequence is ticked. And we're going to hit Control-Alt-G to interpret the footage. Set that to 24 frames a second. Let's drag it down here to create a new composition. So if we click on the, not double click, just one click on the new level sequence, level 1 composition that we created, hit Control-K to bring up the composition settings. That's Control-K. And as we render this out in 4K, we want to set this to 1920 by 1080. And now we're going to be able to scale this down. And we're going to be able to add a bit of wiggle. So let's just load some of this into RAM first of all. So we'll push it up a bit. Something like that. And let's go to our effects and presets, search for wiggle. With the layer selected that you want to apply it to, double click, it'll automatically apply to it. And now we have a nice camera shake effect going on, which really adds to it. It looks nice. And what we can do as well is we can push this up a little bit more, or actually undo that. We can scale it down a little bit, maybe down to 52%. And then we can add our nice cinematic black squares. I don't know what they're called. It just kind of looks cool, I suppose. We'll do the bottom first. So select your rectangle tool, make sure fill is set to black, and then we can just do one of those right there. Not too big, and go to align to bottom, and then click this, Control D to duplicate and align that one to the top. Now let's have a look at this. And music, I have it here. So I can't use the music that I'd like to use because, you know, copyright and all that. But feel free to pick a nice track from whatever music you fancy. And that's it, guys. So again, I do plan on making a part 2 of this, where we're going to be jumping into the next part. So this is going to be a montage, basically. So you're going to have a nice crossfade at a certain point in the timeline, and then you're going to be presented with this guy, and he is suddenly in a different world. He's in a new landscape. It's going to be, the next one we're going to be doing is a snowy, icy kind of a landscape with actual snow. Now, you won't be able to get the snow unless you purchase the plugin that I spoke about earlier, the Ultra Dynamic Sky. Once you have that, we can add falling snowflakes with the click of a button. It's amazing. But if not, I mean, you don't need snow. We can have all the other snow assets, which are all free in Quixel Bridge. But yeah, that's that for part 1, guys. Again, hope you learned a lot. I know this is probably a strange one for anybody who watches a lot of my videos, seeing me do Unreal Engine 5 tutorial. But if you did like it, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to smash the like, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. It really helps me out a lot. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.